Representative Kapture, I know I'm not in your district, but I sent this to all three of my congressional representatives, also to every senator and every House committee that I could find that would allow me to send it to. This private bank got the biggest no-bid contract in the history of the world and paid zero for the privilege, and they have blown it before in the S&L crisis that John McCain was part of. The Federal Reserve restructuring is needed now. If the following people who do not want to give what other large depositors of a regular bank give, i.e. an interest-bearing checking account, then we need to change banks for a central bank. Because a bank will pay interest on deposits for the privilege of doing business with or for the American people's money. Everybody goes out there and gets an interest-bearing checking account. They're out there. To find out who owns the Fed, it's http://www.save/a/files/view/whofed.html, and that'll give you the chart of who's in charge of the federal bank. Maybe KeyBank, who I keep my account with, would like to be the Fed's new charter bank and get the U.S. Treasury's business. When the Fed was set up, the problem was that the U.S. Treasury was charged interest by the bank on the money printed for use and charged by Congress, which constitutionally is the only branch who has the power of the purse. It should have been set up that the Treasury printed money and lent it to the Federal Reserve at a 0.5% interest rate for government budget items, and another amount printed at a 1% interest rate to be used in the private sector. Those percentages would be paid back to the U.S. Treasury from the central bank Federal Reserve. With U.S. Treasury agents included at the top of the section of the bank's corporate structure and in the auditing sections alongside by the bank employees. Thus, when printing money, as a society, as the GDP grew, instead of a national debt has risen since Reagan vis-a-vis the GDP, Clinton lowered it a bit, but Gorgie Jr. has exponentially raised it to the point of this collapse we are seeing in the human loss of our precious treasure of lives in needless wars. I think the Declaration of Independence needs to be looked at seriously again. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that we are endowed by the Creator with certain inalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed, that whenever any form of the government becomes destructive ends, it is the right of the people to alter or abolish it and to institute new government, laying its foundations on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to sufficient effect their safety and happiness. Prudence indeed will detect that governments long established should not be changed for light and transient causes, and accordingly all experience has shown that mankind are more disposed to suffer, while evils are sufferable, than to right themselves by abolishing the forms by which they are accustomed. But this is in bold. But when a long train of abuses and usurpations, pursuing invariably the same object, evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism, and we have that now, it is their right, it is your duty to throw off such government and to provide new guards for their future security. The Federal Reserve Bank, the people who are running it, no longer are representing the interests of the American people or its financial institutions at the local level. It's time to get a new central bank. The Rothschilds and the Illuminati who are running the central bank now need to be replaced at the top, and the Fed Reserve needs to pay interest to the Treasury Department on all the monies deposited in their account for the government for the privilege of being the bank. Period. And I hope you have a better time in Ohio than we are having here in New York. Thank you.